do, what we've been up to, and a little bit about what we plan on doing, and how the community and you guys can help. This is the first year of the advisory board, so we're definitely still in a figuring it out mode and trying to find the best way to facilitate conversations between us and community members, users, partners, everybody in that. Get into more of those details in a minute. My name is Adam Kramer. I'm a senior project manager at Kell Partners, also nonprofit starter pack practice lead at Kell Partners. And we're an implementation consulting partner that focuses exclusively on nonprofits and definitely mostly on nonprofit starter pack, although definitely some other CRM solutions out there.
Tal Frankfurt, founder and CEO of Cloud for Good, and also CRM Market, if you saw my booth out. Cloud for Good works exclusively with nonprofit organizations similar to Kell, helping them create and implement strategic solutions on Salesforce. So working with a variety of types of organizations from smaller nonprofits to very large institutions, helping them basically manage everything on Salesforce: donors, volunteers, cases, dogs, cats, trees, whatever they want to. Been the Salesforce ecosystem for, I think, around 11 years. Certified admin and consultant, Sales Cloud consultant, and was part of the inaugural class of Salesforce MVPs.
Excellent. Before we get started, I guess how many people out there are users of the Nonprofit Starter Pack? All right. Are you on 2 or 3? 2, 3, 3. All right. Excellent. How about the rest of the people in the audience? What brought you to this presentation? Okay. Okay.
So are you consultants, developers? Who's with the nonprofit in the crowd? Okay. Consulting firm? For-profit business that is interested in nonprofit world? Not for-profit business that is not interested in a nonprofit world. Great.
All right. Excellent. And just want to thank our sponsors for making this event possible. Definitely everybody who's on this slide and those who are not. CRM Market, no, definitely without them, the event wouldn't be possible, so big round of thanks. All right, so everyone here, I assume, loves Salesforce. That's sort of why we're here. And you've probably seen this slide before, but I think this makes up a big part about why we love Salesforce, that this is ingrained in their business model, the 1-1-1 model that I'll speak to a little bit. Essentially, 1% of their technology is donated, and that translates to 28,000 plus nonprofits have received 10 free licenses to the Enterprise Edition of Salesforce, which is just a huge, huge, huge amount of money. That translates to $250 million in donated product. Beyond that, they offer discounts of 80% on the rest of their product to nonprofit organizations, user licenses, communities, everything else that they do charge for. 1% of their resources, which translates to grants that they give to specific nonprofits to do certain work. It's $115 million there. And 1% of their people, which translates to sort of days off, volunteer time off that they allow their employees to take, which is in excess of 1.3 million hours, which is pretty remarkable. And one of the nicer things about the 1-1 model is it's been adopted by so many other industry or organizations in the technology space. There are some listed on the slide, very small there, but like DocuSign, Box, and some others as well. And at Kell, I know Cloud for Good similar, we have a sort of we're not an official 1-1-1 model, but we give 3 days off a year for volunteer time. We've donated technology. We've given some of our code to the Nonprofit Starter Pack free, and it's now part of the product. And yeah, we give charitable contributions as well.
We joined, we pledged the 1% last year.
Nice.
So we've officially adopted the 1-1-1 model, and everyone at Cloud for Good gets 3 days of volunteer time off. We donate, we have free apps on the App Exchange, and we've donated about 65K so far to charitable organizations.
Nice, nice.
And before, take it from there. So next.
Oh, okay.
So before there was Nonprofit Starter Pack, really there was nothing. Like when I started, I was actually working for a nonprofit organization that helped at-risk youth, and we moved from Excel. I always say that we had the biggest Excel spreadsheet that I've ever seen. And I've yet to see a spreadsheet that is that big. My executive director was obsessed with data and tracked everything for 10 years. Every phone call, every donation, every grant she lost on one spreadsheet. So it was pretty extensive. And I remember that we were in a fundraising meeting and they spoke about different donor databases, and somebody said Salesforce and said it's free, and my ED was like, free? That's what we should use. And of course we didn't want to spend any money on implementation, so I ended up doing it myself. And when I initially did it, it was actually pre this slide, so we were right here, and just using the enterprise edition. And after that, I remember starting the user group, and everybody was complaining that they're not dealing with companies and accounts. So we were very happy that around 2005, the foundation released what's called the nonprofit force, or the nonprofit template. Has anyone used the nonprofit template? Good for you. Oh, okay. One lucky. Basically, an unmanaged package that brought the individual bucket model to life. Individual bucket, yeah, don't use that. The individual bucket, the idea was, let's use accounts. Well, let's find one account, call it individual, and then associate all these contacts with that individual account. Sounds like a good workaround, but later they found out that Salesforce actually has an actual technical issue supporting any object that has more than 10,000 child objects. So actually put aside all the architectural issues with this model of every donation or opportunity is attached to an individual account that means nothing, or reporting issues. It actually started, there were technical bugs that started popping up. So I think that's what slowly drove them to release the Nonprofit Starter Pack and develop the Nonprofit Starter Pack that started as 5 different packages, separate packages. Contacts and organizations, donations,
Households,
relationships,
yeah.
households, and affiliations.
Recurring donations.
And affiliations.
Yeah.
Started as 5 different packages. They introduced the one-to-one account model. So they gave you 2 options. You have one-to-one, or you have the account. And what the one-to-one did, it's basically mirrored a contact account. So you created a contact. I'm not going to go into that too much because you should not use it either. But the account was Tal Frankfurt, which had a contact called Tal Frankfurt, and we were associated with a custom object for the household. And as it evolved to the Nonprofit Starter Pack, and they started, and I'm right now in 2011, 2013 here, started basically merging all these packages into one package, started Project Cumulus, basically enhancing all that functionality, and that led to...
Yeah, definitely. And one of the key parts of, I think, the evolution of the Nonprofit Starter Pack is both the fact that it was an unmanaged package at first and then released as open source. 2 huge avenues that allow people like you to contribute to it, people like me to contribute to it, to have a say in the roadmap and the functionality and the features, which we'll get to in a minute. But yes, with Project Cumulus, it was a huge effort to then take the 5 different packages and create one new package, NPSP3, that gets upgraded every 2 weeks automatically. This is sort of another amazing thing that Nonprofit Starter Pack 3 offers over Nonprofit Starter Pack 2.
Probably the biggest one. Like if you put all the nice features that they're building into it, always being on the most recent release, I think is a huge advantage.
Plus, I mean, in Nonprofit Starter Pack 2, there were maybe 20 releases total over the course of its life. It was very sort of slow to change, slow to upgrade. Like I said, Nonprofit Starter Pack 3, every 2 weeks, automatically pushed to your organization. The week before, it's pushed to a sandbox. They do bug testing, make sure it's going to work in the sandbox. Sometimes they have backed off that release the next week from what they've learned from that sandbox push. But yeah, essentially it's there, ready to go in your organization every 2 weeks, which poses some interesting challenges. I would call them good challenges for your admin. You sort of have to stay on top of these releases, know what new functionality is being added, know if you want to take advantage of it or not, sort of if that's going to require a possible data migration, new fields that are now standard to the Nonprofit Starter Pack that you may have had custom fields for in your organization before that. But typically it's mostly bug releases, bug fixes, minor upgrades, and then occasionally they'll drop some huge piece of functionality in there like grant management or matching gifts and partial soft credits or in-kind giving. And so you just sort of have to stay on top of that to know what your work as an admin would be.
Yeah, and obviously it also poses a big change to the foundation and just how they operate, right? They brought in a team to actually develop on the Nonprofit Starter Pack. It wasn't just Kevin doing everything. They have to communicate all this information out. So that's part of basically what we're going to talk about later, which is the advisory board. But just some statistics about the Nonprofit Starter Pack. So 55% of the nonprofit customers, that 28,000 number that we showed earlier, are using the Nonprofit Starter Pack. 82% of the customers are P10. P10 is what the foundation call, or not foundation anymore, Celsius.org. That's going to take me a while. The .org is calling P10 everyone that basically is just getting the donated licenses, right? Adam spoke earlier about the 111 model, the 10 free enterprise licenses. If you only have 10 free enterprise licenses, you're not paying for any additional service. You're considered a P10 customer. 66 releases. Like what, 3 times more in the sense, than the entire release of the Nonprofit Starter Pack. This is just amazing. Like the response time to the need has significantly increased with Nonprofit Starter Pack 3. 32 releases last year. More than 80 countries. We're going to talk later about some developments that are related to that. And 3 community sprints. Has anyone here been in a community sprint before? Remotely? That counts?
Anybody going next 2 weeks to the one in San Francisco?
San Francisco,
Yeah. Possibly, yes.
Possibly.
Yes.
So
I would definitely recommend it. It's a lot of fun.
you want to tell them what's a community sprint?
Sure. It's essentially people from sales.org and people like Tal and myself, partners, and people like users of the Nonprofit Starter Pack getting together in one big space and talking about what they would like to see in the product, what they want to do, and then working through those issues right there live with a group of people. In the upcoming sprint, there are going to be 3 tracks, one strictly for coders. So that is not my track. I am not a coder. I do not write code. You do not want me writing code. And so they will be tackling bugs or maybe possibly some functionality that could be knocked out in a day, something nice and easy that might be on the big list that is stored on GitHub of features that they possibly want to add to the Nonprofit Starter Pack. The second track is for documentation. Another huge thing in Nonprofit Starter Pack 3 has been the complete overhaul of all of the documentation. Before Nonprofit Starter Pack 3, the documentation was sparse and not great, at least the stuff provided by .org. Now there is just a ton of great documentation out there.
Which is available to everyone on the Power of Us Hub.
Yeah, even you don't need a hub login to actually access it. It's public, which is even better. So just do a Google search if you don't have access to the Power of Us Hub. Everything from an upgrade workbook to get you from Nonprofit Starter Pack 2 to 3 to how to enter a contact, all that type of stuff. And then the third track is for report building. So people who think Nonprofit Starter Pack should come with more built-out reports, whether they be fundraising reports that aren't included or different demographic information, volunteer information, things that would help new users of Salesforce sort of get up and running.
Is there a question there?
Yes. So it's very confusing. Yeah, I know. It's not. So
There is the sprint, there is the Salesforce Day, and then there is N10.
So the sprint is the day before the Salesforce Day?
correct, and it's in San Francisco, not San Jose.
Sorry.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I think we'll remain silent on the whole communication of these events, but
This presentation is recorded. Hi, Kevin.
but we agree that that could have been done better. All right, so this is just sort of a slide of what the Nonprofit Starter Pack offers. The lines in orange are what Nonprofit Starter Pack 3 brings to the table on top of Nonprofit Starter Pack 2. I won't read all of this. This is, you can find this information online, all sorts of functionality. What I will say about this is for those of you who are on 2 or know organizations who are on 2, essentially there are two parts of the upgrade process. There's the actual upgrade from 2 to 3, and then there's the household conversion. The upgrade itself is painless. There's no reason not to do it. Test in a sandbox. Don't blame me if something goes wrong. But I've never come across an organization that has a problem with just the upgrade. Everything is sort of backwards compatible. You can use the bucket model. You can use the one-to-one model in NPSP 3. You can use all your old custom fields, even if new ones exist. Nothing is going to break when you do that upgrade. The more difficult part, and depending on the level of configuration in your org, it could be simple, it could be hard. The household conversion is what the more intense, painful process is. There's lots of documentation out there about what to look for when doing the conversion. Certain cases, if there are more than one primary contact role and opportunities, if you have records owned by inactive users, all sorts of different things that could affect your upgrade or your conversion, excuse me.
Just to touch a little bit on the household is, earlier I was talking about the bucket account and then the individual one-to-one. The household account structure data model that they introduced is probably the biggest change, right? So instead of putting everything in a bucket individual account or mirroring the contact first name and last name, now the account is basically used as either the household or the organization of the contact. So the data model has changed, which means that if you're using the bucket account, you will need to make some modifications like re-importing your data or moving customization to that new account model.
Should you choose to convert.
Should you choose to convert to that account. So you get all these bells and whistles, the GAU, the API, well, you won't get the address management.
Right, I think there are two features right now that don't work if you're on a legacy system like one-to-one accounts or individual bucket model. That's the household address management and the import object and tool, which is a pretty neat feature that only works with the household account model.
Questions about the upgrade and why NPSP 3? Is anyone here thinks that NPSP 2 staying that's a good idea or not?
Don't need to convert anybody here.
Any questions about the new features that we didn't want to go too much into it, but if there
Yeah,
are.
if anything looks interesting or confusing, definitely feel free to ask questions, either, after the presentation, come up to either one of us as well.
Yeah, so what's the process of really developing and building the nonprofit starter pack? And there's a lot of text here, so I'm not going to touch everything, but from a philosophy point of view of before the build phases, there are a few rules that .org is trying to follow or is following, even when they evaluate outside code to the NPSP. Right? At this point, with the open source, everybody can contribute, but before it's being added to the package, there are some things that are being considered. Just to point out a few of them, keep in mind, for example, that the organizations, out of the thousands of organizations using NPSP, some organizations are P10. They might just have one fundraiser using it, or one or two users that are actually using the system, or they might have 6,000 users using the system. So every change in that package is affecting everyone, right? It's not just the platform that is multi-tenant. The package is also multi-tenant, right? The same analogy that Salesforce likes to use with the apartment building. Everybody's sharing the cost of the elevator. Everybody's using the elevator. If you change it, you might not be able to get a penthouse anymore. So that is a big consideration. And the other one that I just want to point out, and Adam, feel free to point out something else that I'm not, is that don't want to, like the concept of basically not breaking something else. There are a lot of dependencies that are a result of maybe ISV partners that are building apps that need to integrate with it. We don't want to release something and then a week later, no one can accept donations because that model has changed or something like that. So, and partners that are building, SIs like Hell and Cloud for Good. So that big garden is also a big part of the decision of what changes are made to the nonprofit starter pack.
Yeah, just two quick things I want to add to that are that sort of first bullet point on before we build. There are some CRM solutions out there that are very prescriptive in what they do. They sort of put you in a box.
Like what?
I'm not going to name names, but they put you in a box, and that box works. It works, and if that is the need of your nonprofit, there is nothing wrong with going with that box. That is not what the nonprofit starter pack strives to be. It is not trying to say, this is the process for donation entry. This is the process for event management. Nonprofit Starter Pack wants you to use the flexibility of Salesforce and to be able to use whatever solution you find best, not necessarily what they think the best solution is, which I think is a great thing because it just allows you to fully leverage the full power of Salesforce as opposed to some of those unnamed solutions out there. The other thing I would say is that when they do put something in, it 99% of the time comes turned off. So as an admin of the organization, you have to take steps to actually enable it. They don't want you to suddenly start creating all these records that you had no idea were being created for whatever reason, or have to start using an object if you don't want to, if you have a custom object that already takes care of that for you. So definitely a good way of doing it. Again, it takes a dedicated admin to stay on top of these changes, though.
Yeah, it also puts some of the responsibility in the admin's hand that it's not all just turns on. You need to be aware of the releases and what's going on. But I love that the whole conversation about basically a product versus a platform. Mm-hmm. It is a product. NPSP is a product, but it really strives to be a platform that allows for customization, not limiting the flexibility of Salesforce, right? At the end of the day, one of the things that I like about Salesforce is that extensibility and flexibility and ability to integrate with other solutions, and it's not something that we want to limit with NPSP.
Exactly. And if we have time for a discussion at the end about maybe what you guys would want to see in the product at some point, keep this slide in mind. Because not everybody needs, you know, an object for trees or pets. That would never be put in a nonprofit starter pack. All right, so who we are. There are 13 of us on the advisory board. Unfortunately, you're stuck with just me and Tal today. But the 13 of us are comprised of 6 employees of Salesforce.org. They are Judy Sohn, Kevin Bromer, David Habib, Nick Campbell, Mark Baseman, and Mary Pustievsky. That's how you
Wow.
pronounce her name, right?
That
if
is
I'm
impressive.
wrong, I
I
apologize.
don't know anyone that can pronounce her last name.
And then there are 3 user members, so nonprofit organization users. They are John Fine, Lauren Wild, and Catherine Lee. Work for organizations on the West Coast, so they couldn't be here today. And then from the partner world, you've got myself from Kel, Tal from Cloud for Good, and Tracy Kronzak from Bright Step Partners. Sorry, blanking. I definitely knew that. And then the 13th member is Ryan Ozimek, who is a member because he has a lot of knowledge of the open source world. If you don't know who he is, he's the CEO of Soapbox Engage. He's also been involved in Drupal, Joomla, pretty heavily. And he's a great resource to have. And essentially, I would say this is the first year of the advisory board. We are figuring things out. I really like this composition. I think it's great to have 3 partners on the board who have similar ideas and similar goals. We may not agree about everything, but we generally come from the same, this is what we want to see, this is what we want the advisory board to do. And then 3 users who have different mindset about it, but just as important, very important to hear what they have to say about certain things. And then obviously it would not work with .org employees, and these are, you know, some of the ones who are definitely most involved in the building of the nonprofit starter pack. Yeah, do you want to speak to anything else on this one?
Not on the pretty faces.
All right.
So just a little bit about the different things that we discussed during our advisory board meeting. So we meet every other week.
Yeah, every other week.
We meet every other week. We do a Google Hangout so everybody can see everyone. So obviously the community sprints are either ideas of the advisory board or ran by or being run by advisory board members. In-kind giving, the Honor and Memorial Giving, .org, Idea Exchange, which is not live yet. Same thing, account-to-account associations, payments and roll-ups, matching gifts, and the upgrade month that was, what, 3 months ago or
It
something?
was like half of January, half of February. It was not a calendar month. It was a month of time.
Yeah, 30 days. So yeah, a lot of really conversations about what you can see if you look at that. It's you can almost divide it to 3 different sections of here is basically how we get the community involved. Here are additional features, and here is kind of how we get more ideas. Well, actually, that might fall into the community involvement. But kind of more on a technology point of view, how do we get more ideas, and what else do we need to add to the nonprofit starter pack?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, these are just some of the high-level topics we've talked about. Like I said earlier, there's a push upgrade every 2 weeks. And so .org works in 2-week sprints for a specific piece of functionality. So 1 week or 1 2-week sprint, they were working on everything related to deceased contacts, fixing household names related to deceased contacts, fixing, you know, automation around certain solicitation flags, fixing various things, a couple bugs related to some of that automation. And so both Kevin and Nick from .org will give us an update about what is going on in that 2-week sprint. And they generally, you know, have a rough sense of what's coming beyond those 2-week sprints, but not really. And so there are a whole host of issues on GitHub, also Power of Us Hub, where you could sort of browse for bug fixes or future functionality that's being considered, all sorts
Be
of.
part of the conversation. There are conversations that are
Exactly.
happening in GitHub on the actual issues, so you can get some insight
Right.
into what is coming, or at
Right.
least what's the conversation around it.
And honestly, your voice is stronger than mine or Tal's. Like, your voice as a user of the product is probably going to go a lot farther than mine would, because they see that use case much clearer than if I say I have 5 clients who would really use this. You know, like that doesn't do nearly as much.
Is GitHub the best place to see what's just been released?
We're honestly working and talking about better ways to communicate the releases.
I find GitHub confusing. I'm not gonna lie. It's definitely takes a certain developer mindset to peruse the different issues.
There are updates on the blog, so they're slowly. It's honestly there are a lot of conversations right now that how do we better communicate it. The foundation. Don't tell anyone. I'm gonna call it foundation because I just cannot. I've been doing that
Yeah,
11
we're not being
years.
recorded.
.org is they're slowly pushing stuff to the blog. The Power of Us Hub,
Yeah.
like unrelated to the nonprofit starter pack advisory board, who's not part of the Power of Us Hub.
I was just gonna say office hours too.
Office hours.
Yeah, they just, in the Power of Us Hub, just created a group for NPSP release announcements. So it's an announcement-only group, new in Salesforce Spring 16, I believe, that just pushes you what's coming in the sandbox release this week, what's coming in the production release this week. And it has links to all of the issues in GitHub that are being closed, if that is your cup of tea. But it also, at a high level, tells you what is being product. Like, now it has this, and here's the documentation behind it. That's another really nice aspect of sort of what they're doing these days. They will not release a new piece of functionality without it being documented. So I think they've heard that feedback loud and clear. All right. So what are our goals as an advisory board? And they basically come down to 2 categories. We want to facilitate community and improve the product. We don't want that to come directly from us, though. We don't want to only have our ideas be the ones that improve the product. Salesforce.org believes that letting the direction of NPSP be driven by the community, it's going to get a truer voice of the needs of the users who use it. It will future-proof it and eliminate the perception that it's, dictated solely by Salesforce.org, or something that one of their high-paying customers wanted to see in the product, and that's why they're building it. They don't want that sort of situation. And we, as an advisory board, want to provide input on these suggestions. We want to say, oh, this seems like a great idea. As a partner, 90% of my clients would take advantage of this. Or as a partner, I can think of one person who would ever use this. And so having that feedback and a place for that feedback is sort of one of our big goals. We want to ensure that there's a clear model for contribution. Right now, they just, maybe like 6 months ago, released a contribution tool. Has anybody in this room heard of this contribution tool? I'm going to say no, even without waiting for your responses. And so there is a way to do that. It's just, we're trying to figure out how to communicate these things better. Like I said, this is the first year. We're still trying to figure out how to best reach out to the community about all of these things. And so, yeah, definitely some feedback at the end of this would be great in order to do that.
And just in general, like, feel free. Your voice can be heard. Again, I'm going to mention the hub again, but like, we're going to share some ways to contact the advisory board at the end. But if there is a feature that you really want, or you have a question about it, or you have a concern about something, we want to hear that. We are monitoring all these conversations on the hub. You'll see that we're tagging the advisory board on these conversations, and we do talk about them.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So if you have concerns, if you have suggestions, please raise them. We want to hear that. That's really what we're there for.
Yeah, no, I have my email set to get every email that someone tags the advisory board on. So if you tag the advisory board, I am going to read what you say about it.
You mean you don't subscribe to every comment on the How?
Sorry, I do not. I would get no work done.
Yeah. So what's coming? Fully Lightning compatible. That is, I think, probably what I'm most excited about. It's that the team is actually was thinking about it and not waiting until the last moment. Right? Lightning is not ready yet for everyone, so I'm happy that once we're going to recommend it as a consulting firm for people to turn it on, the nonprofit starter pack is going to be compatible to that. Again, I wanted to matching
already-
gifts
it's already in
and
there.
what?
It's already in there, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I wanted to point it to you because you
okay.
guys
Yes, this was
donated.
Yeah, we
so-
donated this code. It was a standalone package that was on the App Exchange that it was developed a few years ago when Blackbaud wisely in quotes, killed Common Ground, and lots of people had nowhere to go, and most of them we suggested moving to the Nonprofit Starter Pack. And we just saw a few gaps in the Nonprofit Starter Pack functionality at the time. They've since greatly improved that over the years. Common Ground was killed, what, 2-3 years ago? A while ago. And so this was one of them that we developed. Essentially, it's functionality that allows you to split one opportunity among multiple people. So things like workplace giving, matching gifts that come in one big check that I gave $100, Tal gave $100, but it's a $200 check. So solving sort of those problems, and also help identify matching gift potentials out there based on people's accounts and affiliations.
And Kel does deserve the shout out for that, for donating that code to the nonprofit starter pack. I think that's one of the big things that people don't realize about the starter pack and the open source is that everybody can contribute to it. And you can contribute by writing an article. Mm-hmm. You can contribute by helping with documenting something or creating reports. You can contribute by actually giving code. So, and everybody's benefiting from that code. Spoke about the 80 countries earlier. There are Spanish and French translations of the nonprofit starter pack and Trailhead modules that are coming up, and a lot of more things that can help people get up and running. And as we said multiple times, documentation around releases and how to get up and running on nonprofit starter pack and things like that.
One of the ones I'm also really excited about, including the Lightning compatibility, is the guidelines for NPSP compatible apps. There are quite a few apps out there that have their own custom objects for things that are already taken care of in Salesforce or the Nonprofit Starter Pack, and sort of saying, no, in order for us to recommend your app, you need to comply to our best practices, which means use contacts, don't create a custom object for contacts. Use campaigns, don't create a custom object for something that campaigns could do. And so we're coming up with those guidelines. Eventually down the road, it could lead to some sort of certification for apps, but that is way down the road. Yeah. All right, so these are the ways that you can help. These are just a few out there. Like I said, the community contribution tool, anyone can upload code. Just sort of goes into your dev org, your production org, and will grab the code you want it to. Pretty simple process. It's not very well documented. It's not very well publicized, but I've seen it in action.
But it's there.
Yeah, and it's there. So start writing code and just contributing it. The hub group, where we, like I said, tag us, the advisory board. I forget what the exact group name is, but you could find it pretty quickly and easily. There's an email address that I believe goes to Judy. I'm not sure exactly who's responding to that one.
Tag us on the hub.
Yeah, I think tagging us on the hub is probably the best way to do it. And then yeah, in GitHub as well. I mean, I guess this is sort of the end of our presentation, and we want to hear from you guys to know
What do you want?
Yeah, how can you help contribute? How can, what would you like to see?
This isn't so much what I like to see, but I really like the elevator analogy in an apartment building. And I sort of thinking about, well, you know, what's the elevator, what's the foyer, what's, you know, the hallway to your apartment. I'm wondering, is there any sort of data collection you guys have done, or is it an idea for studies of what are nonprofits using, or what are donor needs in nonprofits, or has it mostly been sort of what have people been asking for, or?
We haven't done an actual study about it. There was a study a couple of years ago that I think Sam Dorfman ran, or someone from his team, and evaluating how organizations are using Salesforce in general, how successful they are, if they use partner or not, did that increase their success. But you're looking to actually serving the community, or what do you have in mind for that?
So I mean, actually, what I was thinking is not even necessarily orgs that are using Salesforce, but I'm thinking I'm going to be at N10 this year, and it seems like actually they do a lot of their own unique research. Something that's just documenting what are the core features that, you know, a 1-person and a 500-person nonprofit are going to use as the elevator. That's, you know, would make sure that, I mean, I think that we've already clearly hit on a lot of them.
Right.
But I also know that, you know, I think there probably are more.
No, there definitely are. I don't think it's that formalized. And I think that is a problem, honestly. I think it is, you know, certain people's opinions of what that level of functionality should be. And that's why we want more community contribution.
I would even take it to that, like we're even discussing, like, is it a fundraising tool, right? I personally strongly believe that nonprofit starter pack is a good place to start if you're a nonprofit. The fundraising aspect of it, yes, that's one thing that nonprofits do, but they're also doing other things, and they can use the nonprofit starter pack to do other things.
Right.
Should it process a credit card?
That's a good question.
What else?
Missy Longshore is in the Power of Us Hub. She's doing a study right now where she's asking nonprofits how do you use Salesforce. And so we look for us, Missy Longshore, L-O-N-G-H-O-R-E. She's doing a study.
Can you spell Mary's last name?
But yeah, I don't think like Salesforce.org has any sort of
Yeah.
collection.
Not
tools.
official.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
idea, though.
And they're not spying on how you're using Salesforce, in case you were wondering.
They can, though.
Yeah.
The Black Tub. Has anyone ever heard about the Black Tub? They
Yeah.
actually can. What else?